Hello, I am Maddie and I am Marketing Executive at Kuoni, and I've just got back from an amazing trip to Sri Lanka. So we arrived in Colombo and then got on a 4-hour transfer up to Uga Ilagala, which is an amazing hotel set in the quiet northeast of the island, and we went up there because it's right next to Wilpattu National Park, which is one of the biggest national parks in Sri Lanka. So we stayed there for a couple of nights. We did an amazing half-day safari in Wilpattu National Park, and then from there we got a transfer to Cinnamon Lodge Habarana, which is really close to Sigiriya Rock. So while we were there, we did Sigiriya Rock, and we also did Anuradhapura Kingdom Ruins. And then we went to the east coast to stay in Malu Malu for 2 nights, which is on beautiful beaches, and on the way we stopped off at Polonnaruwa Ruins. And then we finally took a Cinnamon Air flight on the penultimate day from the east coast all the way back to Colombo, which was a 45-minute flight on a really small 8-seater plane. And that was the quickest way for us to get back to Colombo, where we stayed at Cinnamon Life City of Dreams for 1 night before our flight home. The weather in June was fantastic for us. I know that it can be temperamental because it's a tropical country and it's got a tropical climate. So the east coast in June, it's the peak season for Sri Lanka. That is when all of the locals head to the beaches themselves. So when we were staying in Cinnamon Habarana, for example, the hotel was at full capacity filled with locals, which was amazing to be surrounded by locals on their holidays. In terms of Colombo and the east coast and some of the west side of the island, the weather was more tropical and was predicted to be rainy, but we were actually extremely lucky. We had 2 bouts of heavy rain, both of which we were in transfers for. So rain did not once land on my head or my shoulders. I didn't get wet from the rain. I was just inside a vehicle. So we were really lucky. The weather was warm, between 25 and 35 degrees depending on the day, but it was warm and dry and it was beautiful and it was perfect for what we needed. Just if you were doing strenuous activities like climbing Sigiriya Rock or the safari, you didn't want to do those in the middle of the day. I think with Sri Lanka it's really important to pack a variety of clothes, and actually I really packed my suitcase depending on what activities we were doing each day, because I knew that with some of the temples you have to cover your shoulders and knees. That dictated what I could wear those days. So I took long floaty skirts, lots of linen shirts, linen trousers. You obviously can take shorts and vest tops, but just be mindful that you won't be able to wear them every day. I think I'm always an overpacker, so if you're not sure and you've got space, take a few extra things, because as it is hot, you might feel that you want to change clothes halfway through the day. And don't forget your swimming costume, because you'll either take a dip in a pool or the sea at some point, I'm sure. Oh, and binoculars for the safari if you have some. Footwear, I would say a pair of comfortable sandals and a pair of trainers. It's a very relaxed country. The evening meals, they don't expect you to dress up. There's no expectation. You could go about your whole trip dressed casually and comfortably. That's not to say you can't dress up. We got glammed up on the last night just for a bit of fun, but you could very easily get away with doing the whole trip with 1 pair of trainers and 1 pair of sandals. And aside from Sigiriya, where I'd suggest wearing trainers, you don't have to. I would suggest wearing them just because I think it will probably be more comfortable, but if you trust your sandals, you could very easily do Sigiriya Rock in a pair of sandals. The flight from Heathrow to Sri Lanka was about 11 hours. I want to say it was 10 hours 45. You get 2 delicious meals on the flight. We flew with Sri Lankan Airlines, so we had 2 meals. We had a blanket, a pillow, and obviously the TV entertainment. The staff are dressed beautifully in their saris. It was a really great relaxed flight. We flew overnight, so I got a few hours sleep to prepare me for a jam-packed trip. So the time difference is 4.5 hours. I've actually never been somewhere before where it has a half-hour difference included. So it's 4.5 hours ahead. To be honest, I think the way that we coped with the jet lag was to just keep going. We had a jam-packed itinerary because there's so much to see and do in the country, so we just got on with it, and I think that really helped us push through. And it was hard to tell whether I was tired because we were doing lots or I was tired because of the time difference, but either way I coped, and I was so distracted by all the amazing things to see and do that I don't really feel like the time difference impacted me. I would just say when you're flying back, make sure you're not immediately going back to work when you land. Give yourself a couple of hours to have a nap and you should be fine. It's easier when you return home and go back 5 hours than I think it is going forwards anyway. I think the top things to know about Sri Lanka are, one, that the locals and the staff in the hotels are all so hospitable. They are so friendly. They will all greet you like this and say "Ayubowan," which means long may you live, and it's really nice. They love it when you respond with the same and just say "Ayubowan," and you can remember that as "Are you born? Are you born?" And that's how I remember it. So they were all really lovely and just made you feel totally welcome. I would say another thing to be aware of is that they eat curry for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and that is not an exaggeration. Obviously, if you're staying in a hotel with a buffet or a menu to choose from, you can obviously choose something that's not curry, but the option will always be there. And I highly recommend that one day you give it a go, because it's really nice to just be immersed into their culture and the way they eat, and they love talking to you about the different foods. So I highly recommend, and don't worry, they're not all spicy. They've got this amazing dish called coconut gravy, which is really mild, and they said that the children out there love it, and they often have it on plain rice for breakfast, and it's almost got a sweetness to it, so it doesn't really feel like you're eating curry when you have it for breakfast. Probably the other biggest takeaway from me, which the locals would laugh at, is that there are monkeys everywhere, and I love the monkeys. They are hilarious to watch. They're really good at acting, and they've got very human-like expressions, and they're really expressive. So I would just say, be mindful, because they'll give you the puppy dog eyes because they want a snack. Don't give in, because I know that that can often give them the upper hand and make them a little bit cheeky. But it is amazing to just see wildlife that we would so desperately want to see in a zoo out and about around the country. It sounds really cheesy, but when it comes to Sri Lanka, what holiday can't you do? It really has got everything. So obviously when you first arrive, you land in Colombo, which is a bustling city with tuk-tuks and markets. It's really up and coming, so there's a lot to do there. But you can really quickly head off the beaten track towards wildlife, national parks and safaris. So there's a lot of wildlife. They've got a huge population of elephants and monkeys. They've got leopards, bears. It's great for bird watching. But you've also got coasts. So if you want beach and you want to relax, you can do that. But there's a whole lot of history as well in Sri Lanka, with temples and ruins, and the locals are always really eager to share that with you too. So you really can do a tour of the island and tick off all types of holidays, and there are an ample number of hotels with relaxing spas and pools as well for the days when you just want to lie down and read your book. When I say that Sri Lanka has wildlife, it really has wildlife, and you definitely don't have to be on a safari to see it. There are hundreds of monkeys everywhere. There's macaques, I'm trying to remember, and purple face langurs, grey face langurs, I think they're called. So those are everywhere, but it doesn't stop there. There's elephants at the side of the road, loads of exotic birds, and there's also things you wouldn't expect to see. So we saw a crocodile at the side of the road a couple of times. We saw a monitor, which is like a big lizard, and we saw a mongoose, which looks a bit like, well, I think we have mongooses here, but it looks a little bit like an otter. They've also got their own type of squirrel, which is much smaller than the British squirrel, and it's got stripes down its back, and they look a bit like a chipmunk, so they were really sweet to see around as well. I'm sure I'm missing things, but there was lots of wildlife. They have a huge number of peacocks in the country as well. So there's always a lot to see. So I highly recommend, if you're on a transfer, keep looking out the window, because it might whiz past, but you might see something pretty cool. I would say that you should go to Sri Lanka if you're looking to see somewhere different. To explore another culture and to really immerse yourself in a country. You can really sort of dive in, and I really enjoyed trying to take in all of the history and learn as much as I could about the country and the food. You could get stuck in eating your curry with your hands. That's what the locals do. Go to a traditional paddy field curry evening dinner where they'll give you hundreds of different dishes to try all in one go. But I think really you should go to Sri Lanka if you're, one, looking to get away and see somewhere new, but also looking to relax and unwind, see a bit of the sunshine, see some wildlife. So the car and driver was amazing, because I think what happens when you arrive somewhere like Colombo is, especially for someone like me who's only travelled around Europe before, it's a bit of a culture shock when you arrive, and it's so nice after a 11-12 hour flight to just hop off the plane and have a driver waiting for you with an air-conditioned vehicle with comfy seats, cold water. So it was a really nice way to arrive in a hot climate for sure. Our guide and driver picked us up, and immediately we set off on our transfer. We were exhausted from our night flight, so we napped a bit, took in the scenes at the side of the road as we were driving along, saw monkeys, cows, dogs, locals, market stalls, everything you can think of. But our guide was instantly reassuring us, telling us about where we were, pointing out sites at the side of the road. It was just great, and for the rest, that really carried on for the rest of the trip. We always had someone telling us where we were going, what to expect, that sort of thing. So I think it was obviously just really comfortable being with the car and driver in terms of having a nice air-conditioned vehicle to go back to, but also it was so nice to have a local who knew what they were talking about, telling us where we were and what to expect and how long the journey was going to be and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was just great having a car and driver. So we got a Cinnamon Air flight from Batticaloa, I believe is how you say it, from the east coast all the way back to the west coast to Colombo, the capital city. This was a 45-minute small plane, an 8-seater plane that took us all the way across the island. It had stunning views. It was also just fascinating to be 2 seats away from the pilots, watching how everything worked. It was just amazing, but from a practical perspective, to get from A to B and do that journey without the flight would have taken us 6 hours, and that was 6 hours we didn't have to get back to our flight. So it was perfect. And I know that they do offer excursions where you just do a round trip and land back where you are to experience the flight, or you can go to Trincomalee, which is up the east coast a little bit. So there's lots of options when it comes to Cinnamon Air. So Sigiriya Rock was absolutely my highlight of the trip. It was genuinely out of this world. I think we'd had a really busy itinerary and we were tired, and the thought of climbing up this huge thing that you can see above the horizon and above the skyline looked daunting and negative and not like something we wanted to do, but equally it's this really well-known UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it was 100% on my bucket list. And actually I feel like the information on the internet is limited in terms of how tricky Sigiriya Rock is. It says that it takes about 3 hours or 1.5 hours, but actually of that time, only about half an hour of it is the actual climb. It includes walking to the base of it, exploring around the top of it, and the climb down. And also by climb, it's a staircase. It's not like you're rock climbing or bouldering and clinging on for dear life. It's a staircase with a handrail that children are capable of climbing up, people wearing flip-flops and sandals, and the view at the top is 1000% worth it. There's monkeys at the top and there's dogs at the top to see as well. But yeah, the view is absolutely panoramic, the full definition of panoramic. And it does take your breath away, and it's an amazing piece of history too. I think the difference between the east and west coast does really depend, one, what you're after from your trip, but also where you go. So there are beaches on the west coast, but there are beaches on the east coast, and it depends what season you're traveling as to which coast is the best to go to. In terms of activities and things to do, it also really depends on which safari you fancy, which animals you'd rather see. I know Minaria isn't on the west coast and you're more likely to see elephants, but Wilpatu is on the west coast and you're more likely to see leopards. So we did Wilpatu National Park, so that's kind of all I can speak on, but I know that in order to do that we needed to stay on the west coast. On the west coast you've got Colombo, which is obviously the capital city, so you've got more of a bustling city with markets. There's some temples to see in the city. You've obviously got the tuk-tuk chaos that comes with a city like Colombo in Sri Lanka, but ultimately I think with Sri Lanka the joy is that you can travel everywhere and have something to see. So you can be on the west coast and see beaches, but you can be on the east coast and see beaches, and there's safaris and national parks across the country. So really I'd say like there's a bit of everything for everyone everywhere.